$100,000 in shares and $100,000 as a deposit on a property are not the same bet, not even close. One is $100,000 working for you. The other is $100,000 controlling a $600,000 asset. Same cash, but completely different machine. So today we put three of these machines side by side, shares, property, and a business, and work out which one actually builds wealth from 100 grand. By the end of this video, you'll be able to look at your own $100,000, whether you've got it now or you're building toward it, and see exactly how it behaves in each of these three asset classes, where each one wins, where each one quietly bleeds, and why the honest answer to which is best is not the one most of the internet gives you. Quick note before we open the plans. This is general information, not personal advice. Your situation is your own, so get advice before you act on anything. Start with what $100,000 actually is in each asset class, because they don't begin in the same place. In shares, $100,000 buys $100,000 of shares. Simple. Through a diversified fund, you own a sliver of a few hundred companies, and that sliver rises, falls, and pays you dividends along the way. What you put in is what's at work, nothing hidden. In property, $100,000 almost never buys property. It buys a deposit. With a 20% deposit plus costs $100,000, gets you in the door of a place worth around $500,000 to $600,000. The bank supplies the rest. So your $100,000 isn't the asset, it's the key to a much bigger one. In a business, $100,000 buys capacity, equipment, stock, a website, the first hire, a few months of runway before you turn a dollar of profit. It doesn't buy a tradable thing at all. It buys the chance to turn your time into something that throws off cash. Three asset classes, three completely different shapes before a single market has moved. And here's the mistake almost everyone makes. They compare these three on returns alone. The returns are the least interesting part of the story. Where they really differ is in how they use money you don't have, how easily you can get out, and how much of you they demand. Here's the load-bearing wall of this whole comparison, the thing most videos skate straight past: leverage. Property's superpower isn't that it grows faster than shares. Over the long run, broad share returns and broad property returns are surprisingly close. Property's superpower is that a bank will lend you most of the purchase price. Watch what that does. Say property grows at a modest 5% in a year. On a $600,000 place, that's $30,000 of growth. But you only put in $100,000, so your return on your money isn't 5%, it's 30%. Leverage multiplied your gain 6 times over. Now the same honesty has to cut the other way. If that property falls 5%, you didn't lose 5% of your money. You lost $30,000 on your 100. 30% of your money, gone. Leverage is a magnifying glass. It magnifies the wins and the losses with exactly the same enthusiasm. Now yes, you can borrow to buy shares too. It's called a margin loan. But the bank lends far less against shares, the interest is higher, and if the market drops, they can force you to sell at the worst possible moment. This is called a margin call. Property debt doesn't behave that way. The bank can't demand its money back just because your house dipped in value on paper. That asymmetry is why property became the leverage vehicle of choice in this country. And leverage isn't free. At a borrowing rate of around 6% right now, a $500,000 loan costs you roughly $30,000 a year in interest. Rent helps cover it, but rarely all of it. So you're feeding the machine cash every month, betting that growth and rent together outrun the interest? Let's run it out 10 years to feel it. The $100,000 in shares growing at a long run average of, let's say, 9% a year. And to be clear, that's the long-term average return of the ASX 200, lands somewhere around $250,000. Now the property, a $600,000 place growing at 7%, climbs toward $1.2 million, and after the loan, your equity has gone from $100,000 to roughly $700,000, because the growth was calculated on the whole asset, not just your slice. On paper, leverage wins, and it wins big. But that clean number hides 10 years of interest rates, repairs, and vacancies you fed in along the way, and it assumes 7% showed up every single year, which it never does in a straight line. That's the real property bet, not bricks beat shares. It's, are you willing to borrow heavily, carry the interest, and let leverage do the lifting? When it works, it's the fastest of the three. When it turns, it's the most punishing. So why doesn't everyone just gear up on property and win? Because the headline return hides a whole set of services running behind the walls, and they cost you. Start with liquidity. Shares you can sell on a Tuesday afternoon and have the cash in days, in any amount. Property is all or nothing and slow, weeks to sell, agent fees, legal fees, often tens of thousands in stamp duty just to get in. You can't sell the laundry to cover an emergency. Then F it. A diversified share fund asks almost nothing of you. Well, that's the entire point. Property asks for tenants, repairs, insurance, and the 3 a.m. phone call about a burst pipe. A business asks for everything you've got, often for years. Then concentration. Your 100,000 in a broad fund is spread across hundreds of companies. Your 100,000 in one property is one building, in one street, in one town, one bad neighbor or one new highway, and your single asset wears all of it. The three are also taxed differently, which matters, but I'll keep it light because the rules are moving. Property has long carried features like negative gearing and the capital gains discount, and the government has announced changes to both from July 2027. That's announced, not yet law. So treat it as a direction of travel, not a settled number. The point that doesn't change. The headline return is never the return you keep. Friction, costs, and tax all take a cut before the money reaches you. There's also one last hidden service, the strangest one, and it's inside your own head. Shares show you a price every second of every day. Watching your 100,000 drop 20% in a week is a test most people fail. They sell at the bottom and lock the loss in. Property doesn't do that. You can't see its price minute to minute, so you hold through the dips, you'd have panic sold in shares. It isn't that property investors are calmer people. It's that the asset hides the scary number from them. That invisible price tag is quietly one of property's biggest advantages. And it has nothing to do with the returns at all. Which brings us to the third blueprint, the business, and the thing that actually decides this whole question. A business is the odd one out. Shares and property are things you buy. A business is a thing you build. And it has by far the highest ceiling of the three. $100,000 of shares that doubles is a great decade. 100,000 poured into a business that works can return 10 times, 50 times more. Because you're not buying an asset, you're creating one. That's how most large fortunes are actually built. Not by picking investments, but by owning the thing that produces the cash. But the flaw is just as dramatic. Most businesses don't 10 times your money. Plenty return nothing or less than nothing, and they take years of your life on the way. The same lever that gives a business the highest ceiling is exactly what makes it the riskiest and the most demanding of the three. Picture the 100,000 three ways in the real world. In shares, it's quietly riding a few hundred companies while you get on with your life. In property, it's the deposit on a place you'll spend a decade nursing toward a bigger number. In a business, say a trade or a small online operation, it's a ute and tools and the first few months of bills. And if it works in 5 years, it isn't worth 100,000. It's worth whatever it earns times a multiple, which could be many times the original, or nothing if the doors close. So line the three up. Shares, lowest effort, most liquid, most diversified, steady. Property, leverage as a turbocharger, but illiquid, lumpy, and cash hungry. Business, the highest ceiling and the lowest floor, paid for with your time and your nerve. Notice what just happened. The best one stopped being about the assets at all. It became about you, how much time you have, how much risk you can sleep through, whether you want money that works quietly in the background or a thing you actively build. The 100,000 is identical. The right machine for it depends entirely on the person holding the key. So read the whole plan. There is no universal winner here. And anyone who tells you there is selling something. Shares are the default for a reason. They ask the least of you and they're hard to mess up. Property's edge is leverage, and leverage is a deal. Higher speed in exchange for higher cost and higher risk. A business has the highest ceiling of all, and you pay for it with the one thing you can't get back: your time. And here's what the wealthy actually do. They don't pick one. They build the business, then move the profits into shares and property to make them safe and durable. The three aren't rivals, they're stages. Most people get this backwards. They wait until they've saved some perfect lump sum before they start, when the lesson of the leverage wall and the compounding clock is that the first 100,000 matters most because it has the most time to work. The $100,000 is just the first brick. What you build with it and how soon you start is the actual question. That's the breakdown. If this was useful, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach more Australians who need to see this. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming, and drop a comment below telling me what topic you want me to break down next.